Hey, welcome to Tangible Takeaways. This is our holiday series, part 1. Today we're going to be talking about how to make meaningful moments around the holidays with your kids. What are you guys going to talk about?
Hey, I'm Mikey, and today we're just going to walk through and navigate through some practical helps and tips for you parents to not get lost in the busyness, but be intentional with your families.
Yeah, my name's Kurt, and I'm just going to talk about integrating Jesus into every part of our Christmas celebrations and Thanksgiving too.
Yeah, all that and more on this episode of Tangible Takeaways. Hey, welcome to Tangible Takeaways. This is our holiday edition, part 1. We're looking at, how can we make holidays meaningful with our kids? So thanks for being on, you guys. It's going to be fun to chop it up.
Sounds good. Sounds
Great
fun.
to be here.
Yeah. So let's get into this first. Is it possible to make holidays meaningful? Like, holidays they're such a blitz, right? Like, you've got so much going on. You're spinning the plates of family dynamics, and you're having people over to your house maybe, or you're going over somewhere else. Like, is it even possible to make holidays meaningful?
You go first.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, you go. You can start us out.
Kurt and I are in super similar seasons of life, so this answer is going to be super similar. But I do believe that there is a meaningful way. However, it's such a temptation to fall into the busyness and fall into I want to say like the tyranny of the urgent. My wife and I, in the season of life, I've told you before, we have 5 kids in 5 car seats.
Yeah.
So the thought of going somewhere on Thanksgiving, the stress of the holidays, the obligation of like the side dishes or the desserts or the gravy, it stresses me out.
Yeah.
Right? So I think to myself, whatever meaningful pull we can have from this season, my wife and I intentionally seek that out. And if I'm honest, and we evaluate ourselves, we'd probably say we don't do as well as we should. But we always give it that effort, and we always make that effort to connect with our boys and what it means, even through the holidays. And instead of subscribing to the social pressures of the performance of what the holiday is, I think one of the biggest values we pull from is togetherness. Togetherness without the cell phones or the emails or the phone calls or the busyness. It's more of a really focused, intentional time. No devices, no screens, that kind of thing. And I think that's the biggest value we draw, and that's how we make it meaningful in our family.
Yeah.
It just looks, it's a lot louder than most households, if I'm honest. And
It's not a quiet and contemplative, meaningful.
No, it's definitely not contemplative. It's more frustrating, or more, just, I call it soul refining, and we're just working this stuff out. But that's what I would say for our season of life and what we have going on. But yeah, again, super similar to Kurt's.
So similar.
Yeah, so similar.
Well, because I got the older kids, and there's just, even through life, there's just a complexity to this season. Like you're saying, you head into Thanksgiving, and it seems like you finish with that busy season, and you jump right into Christmas planning.
Yes.
And it's just kind of a blur for our family too. And I think for me, one of the things that's always a challenge is like my birthday's at Christmas Eve. Yes. So, it's like right here, and then we have all these other activities happening. And for Wendy and I, we've just realized we have to plan. We have to talk before the season happens, because if we don't, it's just going to hit us.
Yeah.
And then we're just reacting to what's happening rather than saying, what do we want to get done? Because if we don't plan, then the tyranny of that moment just takes over. Yep. And it does anyway. All of us, I think, struggle with that. But it just takes over, kind of gets in the way. And I think for us, planning helps us to lay out kind of what we want to do.
Yeah.
Because time is so precious. And many of the things we do, for us at least during the holiday season, are really important. They're great. They're church-related things, they're family, they're oikos.
Sure.
So they're all really good. But then trying to prioritize in such a way that what we're doing also is good for our immediate family, and that there's chances to take that spiritual formation part of Christmas and say, how do we put this back in the home?
Yeah.
So for us, it's planning and then redeeming the time and actually choosing where you want your time to go.
Yeah.
Because if you don't choose it, I think it gets chosen for you.
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah, it's gonna happen, right? One way or the other. And like you said, there's so much to plan for. There's not just planning meaningful moments, but then there's planning, how's this gonna work in the dynamics of my family? Is this gonna be best for my kids, best for my wife, best for my extended family, whoever's involved, right? So there's planning required for that. And then to carve out time that's actually going to be purposeful and intentional
Yeah.
and meaningful. It's like that all is going to require different layers of planning to make sure that that comes together. Otherwise, it's almost kind of like the holidays are going to be fed to you. You know,
Yeah.
like you're going to figure out what it's going to end up being.
Yeah, and when your kids are younger, like Mikey, it's a different kind of planning, I think. Like we have mostly adult children, and so we're going to have to kind of plan with them, not just around them.
Yeah.
Like when you're younger, you can plan your family's events, but when your family's older, you kind of, hey guys, we're thinking about doing this or that or wanting this, and then incorporating all the different elements around your family. It just is a little different season. I mean, I'd love to know,
Yeah.
like when I'm assuming you plan for your family kind of those seasons.
Yeah, I mean, the times that we plan and we're intentional, specifically with, making this meaningful. And it might be because my wife is a 1 on the Enneagram or she's type A personality, but times like built-in downtime is real, where we're going to plan not to do anything. Like, so whatever comes up, we have the freedoms to say yes to. We have, my boys, they love playing board games. And in those times, like, they love being able to count the money in Monopoly or, like take the educated guess and Clue, that kind of thing. But when it's like, oh, well, dinner's from, 3 to 4 and nothing happens until 6, like we're not doing pie until 6. And it's like that built-in intentional downtime is huge because it's like plan to do nothing. So when the time comes, we do have that freedoms. We have those freedoms to say yes, like go outside and play basketball or do a board game, or honestly, literally lay around and listen to music. Like my boys love music, so being able to do that and the freedoms to say, well, we have this or we have that, or well, this is happening later, so we must do this now. And it does take discipline, and it does take that reminder. But I think being intentional with those times so that our boys will, unintentionally, we're building in a tradition. So what's funny is that our boys know to expect pie later after the meal, not directly after the meal or things like that, in order that we plan something during that time. So this year, it's already been called, like, they want to play Yahtzee, right? They want to do it. So they're like, we're going to do that, and we're going to be intentional in it. And they've already, they've been messaging, their uncle, which is my brother-in-law, and they're like, oh, let's do this together. So
Yeah, I love that, even carving out time instead of, because I think sometimes there's pressure for parents coming into a holiday to say, I want to make every second meaningful. And then you're to a point where you're at an extreme and you're planning out every last detail.
Yeah.
But to carve out that time where nothing's planned, to say like, hey, this is your time. What do you want to do? What's exciting to you? What's interesting to you? Because then that allows kind of that freedom and that space for them to kind of go off and do what's interesting to them. You can pull them back into something else that you're like, and here's another meaningful moment. But you don't have to just go from meaningful moment to meaningful moment, because you almost end up feeling so burnt out from that, and like they probably get squirrelier and squirrelier as it goes too. You're like, no, let me read you this other thing and this other thing. It's like, no, we need to just go play and hang out for a second.
Yeah.
So then when we get to like the most meaningful thing of all, and especially at this season when you're thinking of the great prompts that are involved in Thanksgiving and in Christmas, where we're talking about these themes of worship and of celebrating the fact that Jesus has come and all of these things, how do you bring up Jesus in a holiday setting like that and not make Jesus the buzzkill in the room, right? Like, I feel like we've all been in an environment where it's like you are either just about to open presents or you just open presents, and then it's like, wait, we got to talk about Jesus. And it's like, feels like the string attached to being able to do something fun. How do you make those meaningful moments where you're talking about God, you're talking about Jesus, meaningful without making him a buzzkill?
Yeah, for me, I think the challenge I run into is I think we put everything into categories. This is the Jesus time. This is the food time. This is the game time. This is the exercise time. Much smaller time.
Shorter.
This is much shorter.
Which is really just watching football.
Right, and that's the thing. It's a sports or whatever it is. And
Yeah.
we have these categories, and then we think, okay, that makes sense. We have all these categories, but especially when your kids are around, your kids inevitably, as you even do it too, but your kids especially, they rank those categories. So whatever they would rank as the highest category, oh, this is great. And I mean, I know we all love God and we really want to make a difference, but sometimes if we view it that way, God's going to be ranked down here at number 5. And so when we stop the fun and have the God time, it's like, oh, that's right, we got to do the God time.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things I think is really fun to do is just to integrate them so that they're not separate categories, but they're integrated together. So, I mean, I know before we've opened gifts and kind of halfway through, we'll just stop and say, guys, let's take a few minutes and just thank God. Isn't it amazing how blessed we are?
Yeah.
And let's think about people that maybe don't have some of these things. Let's pray for those people in need. And we just talk about people in our world, or maybe people around the world who have less. And so I think there's ways to integrate that so that it's not just in these categories where, oh, this is now my time only, or this is that, but God kind of infiltrates every part of our life.
Yeah.
And again, you still celebrate, the Christmas Eve services, which are awesome, or you celebrate praying around the dinner table at Thanksgiving where the family maybe comes together, and that's all good.
Yeah.
But I think it could be more integrated, and so it's not like as soon as you get done praying, okay, now we don't have to think about God again.
Yeah, we could
Yeah.
just lay him to
we've
the
got
side.
that checklist.
Yeah. It's like checkbox.
So I think integration is big for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And, Kurt, with the years under your belt, I take that so, heavily because my wife and I, in our first 8 years of parenthood period, are still developing what this looks like. My wife naturally a minimalist, and me naturally a gift giver. Like, I love giving gifts. Absolutely love it. I'm a things person, right? Like, I'll get all the things and take my boys out, like, get them stuff. And like, of course, I got a gratitude and being grateful, and never like, flippantly, but like intentionally. But there comes a point where, we're so blessed, like never been without those kinds of things. And God has been, our provider this entire time. And we're intentional with letting our boys know that when it comes to the holidays, my wife and I have recently shifted gears when it comes to having an understanding of the symbol, like the symbolism behind Christmas. And it's not necessarily about the gifts. And I know that there's parallels of like, oh, well, like, everybody brought gifts to Jesus, and it's all these things. And my wife and I have been intentional in shifting gears that the one gift, that we can receive on this day, would be salvation. And we didn't want to make that so big and dramatic that the kids would almost put this, not just the decision on the pedestal, if you will, but more so the implications of what it looks like in our lives. So what's interesting is that we have been able to celebrate as a family just one gift for each other, for everyone to go away together. So it's almost like taking that time to be more intentional, but at the same time still celebrating what Christmas is with togetherness. So things like Thanksgiving, we shifted gears because in terms of like what we're saying, like we're thankful for, to draw our kids in understanding that thankfulness and gratitude oftentimes are used synonymously, but I think that they're applied differently and they manifest themselves differently in our lives. I think that being thankful is a good thing. It's also a thing of this world to say around this time to be thankful for someone or something, and then you place your gratitude and your thanks on something and someone that will ultimately fail you, right? But having an understanding of gratitude, like what are you grateful for that happened to you this year? What are you grateful for in this season of life? And then we whatever their answer would be, we would inevitably point that back to God and say, because of His provision or because of these opportunities, God's given you. You're grateful for this, and what does it look like for you to give back in it? So gratitude isn't just we tell them it's not just an emotion where you're thankful for that, right? Your gratitude is something that moves you. So my boys right now, they're in a roller skating club, right? They go to the rink every Saturday and every Monday, and they love it. And it's funny because it's kind of not a popular thing to do, but they love it. And we asked them, what do you think you're going to talk about around the table for Thanksgiving? And they were like, oh, well, Jude, my oldest, just spats out. He's like, I'm grateful for skating. And I was like, oh, well, tell me why. And he said, well, I'm grateful for it because I get to do it with my brother. And he and Calvin do it together. They're twins and they're 8. And I said, great, like within your gratitude, what makes you so grateful about it? And what are you going to do like with it? And he was like, I want to teach my younger brother Zion how to skate. And Zion's cool. Not as like physically equipped yet, so he's like, I'll be patient with him, and in as much as his 8-year-old brain, he's like, and I'll teach him, and one day he'll probably be better than me.
Yeah,
and it's
yeah, that's so great.
Well, what's evident is that it was not right now. He's not better than me, but I'll teach him in that. But instead of like, oh, I'm thankful for this, and sure, I liked that, so I'm thankful. But it's like, no, like, where's your gratitude coming from? And it's like, well, you're grateful, and we attribute that to God. We say we're grateful for that. And then what does it look like for you to give back in that? Because gratitude, again, it will well within you, that generosity. And and generosity, is a characteristic that we're just trying to instill in them so young, so that when they see these opportunities and they feel compelled to give or to be generous in that moment, they don't withhold because of the influences of society. They're like, this is a normal thing we exercise and we practice. Yeah. So, again, even just the shift of gears of like, subscribing to like because our Amazon lists are on the app and everyone can see them. So if you wanted to get a gift, we know where to look because we've already set up our lists. Yeah. But my wife and I have taken a step back from that and kind of leaned into this intentionality with our kids. Here's the thing: it's still developing. Like, we're still trying to work this out because the kids are also like, we didn't get each other gifts, but I mean, the uncles still get the gifts, the grandparents still get the gifts, and they still give them to them. And they're like, oh, well, what did you get from mom and dad? And they're like, we're going to Joshua Tree.
We
got
time.
You're crafting traditions, though.
Yeah.
And and it's just a little bit creative. And I like that the creativity is what helps integrate. The creativity brings those traditions together.
Yeah.
I always laugh because I can't cook in the least. I am horrific.
That's surprising.
I know, shocker.
I take you as a cooker.
Not me, no. But at Thanksgiving, for instance, my wife will be in there cooking, and just one of our traditions is when we're done with the Thanksgiving meal, the guys clean up the kitchen. We all get up. It's the normal thing, and it's another way of saying thankfulness.
Yeah.
To say, hey, you guys killed it. What a great meal. And we go up and we do that. And so it's really just a little tradition. It's silly, but it's part of that broader story of gratitude for all the things we have.
Yeah. And I love that from both of you guys saying, hey, there's not like one right way to bring up Jesus or to integrate the thankfulness that we have for even the worship that's happening in these meaningful moments around holidays. It's going to be contextualized to who your family is, to even the life stage that you're in, right? It's not going to, what's working for your kids right now in your family setting isn't going to work the same way when they're adults, because it's going to grow and it's going to evolve. And so I love even the different seasons are going to form that, but then also skill sets too. Like, I'm just not a good cook, so I'm going to be a part of the cleaning afterwards.
Cleaning really good.
And I love that. I think that's great to just embrace not only who you are, but who your family is. Like, there's this pressure in the social media age of we've got this image of the perfect family, and everything in their life is beautifully integrated, and there's like everything just seems to go flawlessly, and it just works really well together, and they're good at everything, and we're just not seeing an accurate picture of those people. But that puts a lot of pressure on us when we get around to the holidays, feeling like, man, we need to be perfect, and we all need to be good at all of these things, and we need to do every last thing together. And it's like, maybe we don't. Maybe what we do is we instead elevate that the guys they're not good at cooking.
I'm never going to beat Bobby Flay.
Yeah.
It isn't going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
But I can clean.
Yeah.
I pegged you more of a Julia Childs guy.
No, not really. No. I'm more Captain Crunch.
Yeah. Okay, I like that.
But I love that. I love embracing that. And even as you're saying, like, man, things are changing for you and your wife.
Yeah.
So then that's going to change the way that you guys do things around the holidays. As God is evolving the way that you guys approach holidays, it's going to impact the way that your kids interact with them too.
Absolutely.
So I love the intentionality there. What are things when you think of how other people could make a meaningful moment, and it maybe doesn't have to be something that's like verbatim of like, this is exactly what we do, but what are maybe even some stealable things that you've done or you've seen done that you're like, man, this is a really good moment. This created a good moment for a meaningful conversation with my kids, or a meaningful conversation around the table, or even a memorable moment. What are some things that you guys have done that you're like, ooh, if I could recommend that to somebody to steal it, I would?
Yeah, for us, I think one of them is we don't have anyone put ornaments on our Christmas tree until we're all together.
Okay.
So we wait until we make sure the entire family's there as much as possible. Now we got adult kids and I get them into town, but you wait to put them on, and then we put the music on. And then it's funny because we have ornaments that are the age of our kids. So we have 20-plus-year-old ornaments that they actually put their own ornaments on the tree, and here's Erica's or Emily's or Alyssa or Austin's box of ornaments, and they have their own boxes. And as they put them on, it's actually a retelling of their own story. It's a story of God's kindness. It's a story of difficult times. It's a story of challenges. It's a story of, wow, that was really a terrible effort. We joke about that, and they laugh at their own ornaments. but they really are stories in and of themselves. Every one of them comes from a year. And so there's a picture of them when they're 3 or 8 or 4. They made this for us or whatever. Or it's our mission trips that we've been on. It's things where we have studied God's Word together. We have things like that. Or vacations. So all of those things are kind of their lifestyle and their life stages that we've gone through. And so every Christmas they gather together, there's conversations for about an hour as we're putting ornaments on the tree and we're listening to music. And it's
Reflecting
just,
on all those memories.
It's just reflecting on all the goodness of their life, of what God has done. And then even every celebration is a moment to say, I can't wait till next year to regather, because it's a story of it's a mosaic of their life. And so those ornaments are just one element of that. And I think anyone could do that. Even if you have little kids, you start saying, I'm going to buy an ornament every year for you guys. And it becomes part of that story you pass along to your kids. And eventually we know we're going to give those ornaments away to our kids. But not for a while. We're going to keep on those.
You got to keep them coming
We're gonna
back,
have to pay for them, but that's okay.
So good. Yeah, I the first holiday season I spent with my wife and her family was 17 years ago. And they gave me a seat at the table, and my mother-in-law, being from London, she has her traditions that she grew up with and everything. So I talk about place settings, name tags, okay? Yeah, decorative ones at that. They have the pine cone next to the name tag. It smells like cinnamon, and it's all decked out. She does a great job, and she loves it. She makes things like Yorkshire pudding and things like that, and it's just like those traditions. But one tradition that to answer your question, that could be easily stealable but fun and intentional with some family vibes to it is I don't know if you've heard of them. They call them poppers. I don't know if it's real, but it's where say if Kurt and I are sitting at the table and we shared a popper, which just sit in between these in the place settings. They're I don't know where you get them. Probably on Amazon. You get everything on Amazon. Well, it looks like a giant candy, right? Just rolled in. Like you hold one side of the popper and I hold the other, and you pull. And one side of the pull wins whatever's in the middle. Well, my father-in-law has a tradition of sneaking a $20 bill right in one of the poppers. So he'll open the box of poppers, stick a $20 bill in, and then he'll mix them up and he'll put them all around the table. And then at the end of the meal, right? At the end of the meal. That's typically the time where we'll launch into what we're grateful for and what's been a blessing to us this year, and then we'll say, all right, it's popper time, and you just grab the popper, and then so you go to the left no matter what, so everybody goes to their left, and then they pull the popper, and everyone basically gets 2 chances at winning the little trinkets that are inside, but it is what it is. And what's funny is that over the years we've tracked who wins every time. Right, and it's inevitably my brother-in-law. The guy just wins. He's the stud. He's
still a winner. You seem a little bitter.
Yeah. Well, tell me about that. I'm like, man, how does this guy win every time? And then my wife, and then, it was just the two of them growing up. But my wife, guilt trips him into giving her the 20. Yeah. So she inevitably gets the money, which I benefit from. But it's just good family conversation. It's intentional. I think it's fun and quirky because not being from this kind of background during the holidays, I step into this world and it's nice and light and fun and intentional, but also just kind of quirky. It's great, popper time, and I'm I don't know what that means. So it's we all get poppers and we just pull them, and it's almost like that wishbone from the chicken, and you break to see who wins. But it's been a lot of fun, and we do it every year, and it's a fun time. So we enjoy that. Yeah.
I love the thought of almost kind of taking apart some of the stress around holidays and just embracing who your family is, and that. I almost think a big key to the whole thing is just being present in the moment with your family and not being distracted by what you feel like your family should be or what they should be doing, but this is who they are. And let's just be together and enjoy. One of the things I'm thinking about that was so not picturesque that my family did all growing up is there came a point we would go out to Lancaster to do Thanksgiving with my cousins for a long time, and now that we're all grown up and stuff like that, we do it different. But when we would go out there, what we eventually realized is my aunt didn't enjoy making Thanksgiving dinner and nobody enjoyed eating it. It just wasn't the kind of food that anybody was enjoying. So we just started ordering Domino's for Thanksgiving, and it was just why make that a big deal just because it needs to be? That's not what our family enjoys. And so we just do Domino's, and I remember eating Domino's pizza for so many Thanksgivings, and that just kind of became a piece of what we did, embracing, hey, this is just who we are as a family. We just don't enjoy some of these things, and let's not pretend to. I think we put up with so much pageantry in our families to be we just have to do these things because it's what you're supposed to do. And I think meaningful moments come with being present and being honest, saying, well, this is who we actually are, and this is what we actually enjoy doing together. And then that frees us up to just be present in the moment instead of, kind of being distracted by what we should be.
And as the kids get older, it's funny because like I used to always, when I talk about put the ornaments on the tree, I always put the playlist together. So it's my songs, it's all the Christmas stuff, and then basically I have one of my kids is like, I got Spotify, Dad, I got this. And they're taking over the place, and you just smile, you're going, okay, and you give it away because that's part of that story too, and so it's really fun. It's fun to know that it's like you're saying, it's in that moment you figure out who you are as a family, how you relate to each other, and then share it together.
Yeah, and that intentionality beforehand, like we talked about at the beginning, to say, okay, we got to get ahead of this and plan so that we can, when are all the kids coming into town, or when are we going to do this dinner, or when are we going to get away, or whatever it is. We got to get out ahead of it and plan. But then once we plan, now we have this freedom to just be present, So thanks for being on, you guys. I appreciate it. It's fun to get to chop this up. And we're going to have lots of great episodes coming out about family dynamics around the holidays and how you can lean in and be purposeful. So as always, maybe drop a tangible takeaway of just some meaningful traditions that you might have in your family. And don't forget to like this video and maybe share it with a family member to say, hey, let's do something meaningful this year. So we'll catch you guys next week on Tangible Takeaways.